Welcome to the Aquarius Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the Aquarius Podcast is sponsored by OASE, the global leader in water gardening technology. OASE is a relatively new entrant into the indoor aquatic space, and they're doing all us hobbyists a favor by stepping into an already competitive market and raising the bar with excellent products that have innovative features. One of the coolest features to the OASE line of power filters is seamless built-in heater integration. So if you've been looking for a way to step up your aquarium filtration and hide your heater without going the sump route, then I highly recommend you check out OASE's Biomaster canister filters and BioPlus internal filters. That's Biomaster canister filters and BioPlus internal filters. Learn more by checking out oase-livingwater.com. That's OASE-livingwater.com. I will also have this link in the show notes for quick access. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. My guest today is Scott Peets. In a time when local fish stores are closing, this man just opened one up in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So Scott, welcome to the Aquarius Podcast.
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, like the intro says, man, you just opened up a fish store, a local fish store.
Yeah, it's called the Nano Tank, and I opened up Saturday on the 19th.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations. So it's only been, 4 days now? If I'm doing my math right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, see, I passed math class. All right, so so you've been open for 4 days, and, before we jump into the origin story, I mean, how have the past 4 days been for you?
Good. The first day was absolutely amazing. Like, blew my mind how much support I got. The following days are a little bit slower, but I definitely had some people come check it out. But I just think it'll be, hopefully it just stays steady and picks up.
And now to kind of set the stage, it's like winter frozen tundra, negative 40 degrees where you are, right?
Yeah. Well, crazy enough, we had some snow. The pretty much the day of my opening, pretty much closer to the end of the night, but and then it rained the next day, and then it was like -9, and it froze, freezing everywhere.
Okay, and so you having an awesome opening day, and then things tapering off just a little bit, but I mean, all things considered, with the fact that it's kind of a snow apocalypse in your neck of the woods, not too bad, right?
No, and and I even say that on some of my social media is like, drive safe, because I know braving the weather just to come out to my fish store, is it's risky, but it's awesome, I guess. But we're all New Englanders, so if you don't know how to drive in this kind of weather.
Yeah, no, I will stick to public transportation if I ever come out there in the wintertime, because I can drive in a little bit of snow, but nothing like what you guys are used to. And so, a lot of times I like to pop on Google Maps and check out to see where my guests are from. I had a guest in Mexico, and I was checking out his location, and I've done that with Canadian guests. And so now I'm checking you out, and you're in New Bedford, and you're like almost in the ocean. You're almost in the Atlantic Ocean in a thing called Buzzards Bay.
Yeah. Oh, well, so if you look at Massachusetts, we say Cape Cod is the arm of Massachusetts. New Bedford is kind of, if you follow it, is kind of like in the armpit of the arm. So it's kind of funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Tons of history in my city. Big fishing and whaling. So a lot of history in the city.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before we kicked off the show, but you do have the quintessential New Englander Boston accent, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And thank you for asking, but one of the questions you asked me was, do I want you to try to tone back the accent? No, man, I want you to let it fly. If you've got any New England sayings that just happen to come out, I think that's awesome. I'll probably ask you a question about it, because I won't know it, and I'll be curious. But no, man, I think that I think that's fantastic, and I hope everybody listening to this, gains an appreciation for you, follows your social media accounts, and weather permitting, or if they're being safe, just to come out and check you out in New Bedford. Because everything on the East Coast, you guys are like an hour away from everything, right? Like I'm being from California, like you have to drive a day to get out of the state, where you can go through like 12 different states in a half hour.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty cool, because you can, Rhode Island's not too far away, then you can get to Connecticut easy, a little bit out of the way, like a couple hours up from New Bedford, and you're in New Hampshire, Vermont. So we got it all.
Awesome, man. All right, Scott. So the Nano Tank is the name of your store. So let's go ahead and let's jump in the Wayback Machine. What is your origin story?
Well, my hobby has been on and off throughout my whole life. So as far as I can remember, like maybe 8, 10 years old, I had a cousin that was about 2 years older than I, and we had a tank at his house, and we had black mollies and stuff like that, and we bred them, and it was, it was one of those things. It was just like with guppies, you see the live birth, and you're kind of hooked. You're like, this is awesome. So we actually bred betters when we were that young as well. So they end up dying, unfortunately, because we at that time the fry food was liquid, some liquid stuff that we got, and when we were feeding them, over squeezed it, so we lost all those babies. But so on and off, I've been through saltwater and freshwater, back and forth. Um, and I kind of hinted at a little bit before the show too, is so when I was probably like 14, 15, there was a store, Pat Nod's Aquarium Pet Supply in New Bedford, and that was open for 70 years. They just closed in 2016, unfortunately. But we used to walk there. My friend and I used to walk there every single day and go check out the fish. That's how much we were into it. And so much so that his parents thought that was code word for us to go smoke marijuana.
Did they ever try to intervene and like grab a sample of your hair to test it out or anything? Or like did they ever follow you to make sure you're actually going to the fish store?
I don't know if they ever followed us. They never told us, but we were actually going to the fish store. We never touched that stuff, actually. So it was always funny. But they'd always accuse. They'd be like, "Is Scott getting you into smoking marijuana?" And they'd be telling their son, and then we'd be, adamant, like we weren't doing anything wrong. We were literally going to look at all the tanks and drool all over the fish that we'd want to have.
Because I guess if I think about it, if you're like a preteen or a teenage pothead and you're using the excuse of you're gonna go to the fish store as your cover, that's a pretty lame cover, right?
Yeah.
Good times.
But I guess because we did it every day, and I don't know, for them it set off some alarms, I guess. But
Oh, that's funny. So then, at that young age, what did your personal collection look like?
at that age, I think at that time I had roughly eight. I think 8 tanks I had in my bedroom. I had a very small bedroom, but I had an entertainment center, and where the TV goes, I had a tank on top of the entertainment center. I had a couple of tanks. I had, self stand with 2 tanks on it, but I kept guppies, a lot of guppies. I'm a guppy fan even now, but I had, goldfish, Oscars, all kinds of different things. Some stuff that I probably shouldn't have in the size tanks I had, but those are things you learn as you get older and more experienced.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so at that young age, did you get connected with any fish clubs, or was it just kind of, you and your buddy on your own, just really experiencing maybe some fish community action just through the fish store? Because back then, certainly, I'm going to go on a limb and say that you probably weren't on forums, and obviously YouTube wasn't around, so your outlet to connect with other fish keepers and build your knowledge.
Then it was. I didn't even know that there was such thing at that time as fish clubs. Yeah, it was mostly just meeting people at the store or just reading as many books as we could get our hands on.
So you dabbled in a little bit of saltwater, you've done some freshwater, and then I guess at what point then, and how far in your journey is it like, all right, man, I think I need to start a fish store?
So, so the last tanks I had were well, I've been out of the hobby probably since 2013. And when I had those tanks, those were that was at a saltwater time. And so I had my own farm for a while. And so I was a city kid that decided to open a farm, and I did that for 5 years. But, so just my time was occupied with that. So I couldn't get into keeping fish. So I decided, I was like, just recently I started getting into fish clubs. So I joined the New England Fancy Guppy Association, the Boston Aquarium Society, the Tropical Fish Society of Rhode Island, the Worcester Aquarium Society, so I'm a member of all those clubs now. And I was like, you know what? I do things big, so I wanted to open. I would just wanted to have a big fish room. It wasn't even my idea wasn't even to have a store at first. It was just I'm going to have this big fish room, and I can't have it at where I live now. So I'm going to try to find a inexpensive commercial property that'll let me have this. I was looking, for any kind of property that might be suitable to have a fish room, and then it was. I think I'm just going to turn it into a store, and this idea manifested within the last 4 or 5 months. So I worked pretty quickly.
Wow. So, man, there's a couple things there that I want to unpack. One is that you ran a farm, so I don't want to let you off the hook on that one because there's some questions I have on that. But, you actually, without knowing you wanted to run a store, you sought out a commercial space for your fish room. Like, that's how passionate you were about just having a big old fish room. I don't know of anybody else that has shared that story, outside of this podcast or just talking to other aquarists, that they've gone out and actually looked for a rental property to have a fish room.
Yeah.
That is pretty crazy. How did your search go with like landlords and whatnot? Did they care? I mean, I guess as long as you're paying and you're not causing trouble, but what was that experience like?
Some of them thought I was crazy, and they weren't really receptive to it. Just some of it was just logistical things. Other places just didn't have access, like good access to water and things like that. And honestly, I was looking for some place that was inexpensive, which was a little bit more difficult to find. But the place I'm in now is really good.
Okay, so was there a certain like square footage requirement that you were trying to hit, or were you just, obviously from a commercial space? I mean, they can, run fairly large warehouses to retail locations, which I'd imagine they wouldn't want you to open up a private fish room in a retail spot. I could see that being problematic. So, was there trouble finding the specific size you wanted?
Not really. There was a lot of smaller spaces, which I was looking for. So I was looking for at least 300 square feet. I was giving myself, which is kind of, it's not huge, but I knew that the smaller the square foot, hopefully the less expensive it was going to be. So the space I ended up with is actually 1,100 square feet, but it's made up of 4 or 5 rooms. But I made it work.
Interesting. And then the building that it's in, I guess maybe one of the differences that I'm trying to wrap my mind around or I'm coming to a conclusion on is that in New Bedford, I guess where you're looking, maybe it's just a different style of architecture on the East Coast and in your city than what I'm used to on the West Coast.
Yeah.
At least as far as what's available for commercial space.
Yeah, and so the space I'm actually in is a mill. So New Bedford had a huge history of textiles. So there's these huge mills that were built, and they used to manufacture tons and tons of textiles. Now that industry is barely in the city. They use the mills either they convert them to housing or they stay as like storage, commercial type space.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and so, I mean, I guess who are the other tenants then? I mean, you don't have to call them out by name, but are your other tenants in the mill industry, or you are in a situation where it was once a mill and now, you're next to a dog washing place and you're next to a tax preparation place on your other side? Is it kind of like that?
No, actually, there is one other retail space there, in the mill, in this mill building that I'm in. It's a furniture place baby furniture place. But everybody else is mostly storage and other businesses that are not retail. So there's like a guy that was making frames, like building frames, I guess, and there's people that fix furniture. But for the most part, it's mostly storage units. And it was actually the first retail place that's been in there or just got in there in the last 25 years. So.
Oh wow, interesting, man. If I didn't want to already go visit your space because it's a fish store, just going and seeing what they've done with what was once a textile mill and seeing what it is now, I'm very very fascinated to see that in the neighborhood that you're in and just get a feel for what that's like in New Bedford. And so, like I said, the farm thing, man. You ran a farm for 5 years. Like I feel like I can't let you fully off the hook on that. What I mean, can you kind of give me a real brief? Like, what was that experience like? What did you have on the farm? What kind of animals? What kind of crops did you produce?
Yeah, so I was a protein farmer, so that means that I did a lot of lamb, chicken. We did have some cows, um, turkey. So we had a bunch of different animals. We had goats. So yeah, I mean, I just got interested in food and where it came from, and I'm actually a veteran. So when I was in Afghanistan, I did a lot of reading and research about farming. Came back. I kind of started my farm, and I also decided to go get a degree in sustainable agriculture. Um, so all my stuff was grass fed, antibiotic free, very into sustainability and localism. And yeah, I did that. And the only reason why I got out of it is because I got offered a job to manage another farm. The gentleman I was working for uh, wasn't the nicest guy. Let's just put it like that. And that kind of stopped my farming career. And it was either try to save up money to reinvest into my farm or roll it into something else. And here we are now.
Oh, interesting. And so, I mean, do you ever think in the future at some point that maybe you won't have a farm for the purposes of generating income, but do you think you'll ever do it to as kind of a subsistence thing where it's your own personal farm and you're just feeding yourself and your friends and family?
Yeah, I absolutely would do that. Um, so I still live in New Bedford, which is a small city. My farm was outside, so I was like a tenant farmer. So I never lived on the property. But if I ever do get to own land, um, yeah, absolutely, I would love to do that. I do miss farming, but um, but I also love the hobby of keeping aquariums and stuff, and especially now that there's aquascaping and all these other cool facets of keeping fish tanks. So it's kind of reinvigorated my passion for it.
I'm not gonna lie that there is a part of me that would love to have a farm and to live that lifestyle. It's something that I've kind of looked into before, but I just don't know if I necessarily have the skill set to do that. But I definitely appreciate it, and I think that's awesome that you did it, and that you may actually go back to it at some point in the future. But as a, if we're to call it a second place or a runner-up, man, running a fish store and kind of living and breathing in the aquatics hobby is pretty stinking cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
All right, so you're looking for your commercial space. You find it. How long after you found the location to when you then decided to pivot to go ahead and do the fish store?
I think it was kind of all at the same time. Honestly, it was like I kind of found this spot, and I'm like, of course, I'm watching YouTube and all the great people, and I know you work at the co-op now, and I'll tell you, watching his videos and it kind of was like, wow, it's possible to, to make money in this in the hobby. It's possible, and I definitely, I think I have the drive and the determination. So, and I'm kind of a risk taker. What can I say? So it kind of happened, kind of all at the same time. Like I got the space, and I'm like, well, I can make this a fish room, or I could try to open a small store and have my own fish, have the fish as well, and hopefully sustain the hobby and fill a void. Like I said earlier, Pat and Odd's Aquarium and Pet Supply was our last place in New Bedford, other than the big box stores. And when they closed, it put a hurt in the hobby, I think. And so, I mean, and I even heard it, probably 95% of the people that came in on my opening day was, since Pat and Odd's closed, we haven't had anything, and I'm so happy that you're here and we're going to support you.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is wonderful to hear from your customers and in your community. So then let's talk about then. We now know you want to open up a fish store, like that's in your brain, and you said it took you about 5 months, I think, to actually get everything together and to open your fish store. So what were some of the decisions that you made, and what direction did you take your fish store? I think the Nano Tank, the name, I think kind of alludes to it, but why don't you go ahead and walk us through that thought process?
So yeah, so the Nano Tank, it kind of has more than one meaning. I know right out there, it kind of niches me into a lot more nano fish, nano style tanks, which is absolutely true. But I'll also keep some bigger stuff and I'll sell some bigger stuff. But it's also because it's a smaller store. So it is the Nano Tank, you know? Um, yeah. So my first processes were to figure out what I needed legally for permits and stuff like that to actually open a retail space. So I had a little bit of experience with some permit stuff and things like that from having my farm, but having like a real retail, like a excuse me, real retail space.
Yeah, no worries, man. We'll get through this together.
See, my accent's tripping me up now. Um, so yeah, I just needed to figure out what permits I needed. So it was just a lot of research and trying to figure out all the steps that it needed to happen. And then, like I said, I think it happened pretty quickly from kind of inception to actually happening. So at the same time, I'm designing rack systems and how I'm going to build things and uh, kind of putting a budget together.
And
And
so
I'm not the.
And
I'm
so,
sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry for interrupting you, but I want to jump on that. So your rack system, right? Like, I guess let's start talking about some of the elements and the design choices that you went with. So, your racks, like, what'd you end up going with for racks?
So I built my own. I used two by four lumber and I used dado joints. Uh, so uh, I've built things to hold things up before. So thankfully in farming, um, you become a jack of all trades type thing. So carpentry and all that stuff, it might not look the prettiest, but you get some skills here and there. So I knew dado joint is pretty strong. I researched it. Ted Judy has some YouTube videos about him making his stands, and he used dado joints. So I used two by four lumber, and I decided not to paint mine. So what I did is I took a flame weeder. It's basically a torch, and I basically flame aged the wood, and then I used linseed oil to seal it. And so I made two racks that holds about 12 10-gallon tanks and two 20 gallons on each. So I also on one of the end racks, I actually extended out where the tanks sit on, and I have shelves which I end up putting some smaller tanks on there. So these two big racks that I have on this one wall holds about 34 tanks, I believe.
Oh, nice. And I'm glad that you talked about busting out the flamethrower that rack, because I watched that video. To see somebody take a flamethrower to some 2x4s for their racking system was really cool. And then the way you finished it off, I mean, your racking system is absolutely beautiful. So I think I would have to imagine you got a lot of compliments on opening day for those alone.
I did. A lot of people loved it, and I think they did. I think they came out pretty well. So.
And then as far as your livestock goes, we're keeping, nano-esque fish, and I'm sure you probably got some bigger ones in there. I guess what was your livestock decision for opening day, and did you leverage the local community? Are you buying fish from local breeders? Are you going through a wholesaler?
I am going through a wholesaler. I did get some stuff from some local breeders. So I knew I wanted to stick with the smaller fish for the most part, community type fish for the most part. And so I love rasboras and I love tetras and stuff like that. So, and as like I said, I'm a guppy fan, so I definitely have some guppies in there, and we'll be getting some more. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those kind of like some of the fit, like I said, it's more the smaller fish that sparkling gouramis we have in there. We have anchor cats that you don't see all the time, or at least I haven't seen them that much in the stores. Pea puffers, everybody loves those. So yeah, just a different variety. We have white clouds because it's cold out here, and sometimes people don't want to heat their tanks. So
Mm-hmm. No, very cool. And then as far as your the rest of your store layout and design, your quarantine process, right? Like, I guess, what are you doing for your quarantine process?
so the fish that I have, initial fish, I quarantine them in the tanks that are there, because I had them before I even opened. I had them about 2 to 3 weeks, and so I'm actually in the process of making a quarantine room in one of the other rooms. I'm actually making a quarantine room, and it's going to kind of be half quarantine and maybe half like personal room type. So I'll have like some breeding projects in there as well.
Oh, very nice. And I think one actually important thing that we haven't even pointed out is that maybe people are picking this up, but all of your tanks are independent, right? So you're not doing a shared sump system. You're not sharing water amongst the tanks. Each tank is its own ecosystem.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I made each one individual. Um, I I wanted to. So I don't know if I should. So my budget for this whole store is under $6,000. So I wanted to. I needed to stretch that money as best as I could, and so automatic water change system didn't really happen. But I knew that everything had to be separate and individual because I didn't want to risk, um, losing multiple tanks if quarantine went wrong or something else just popped up out of nowhere. Like I said, all that stuff is separate, and I got a lot of upgrades that I plan to do in the future.
Yeah, I think that is a super important thing to have, building out a fish room or building out, especially for a fish store, is to have those independent, separate tanks, having them on their own water supply. Even though you're not doing the auto water change right now, I would guess that that's probably something that's going to be on your upgrade list. But having each tank separate to keep those, any of the diseases or anything like that separate so that it's not spreading across the entire tank, which is the downside of obviously the shared water system, right? Sure, it's a little bit easier on the maintenance side of things, but the fact that you could introduce those to healthy fish from a tank, 5 tanks down is not always a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I knew that was going to be a part of my fish room or fish store, from pretty much from the planning stages. I knew that it had to be separate. I was not going to take that chance to have the system. And like you said, it might have made maintenance a little bit easier, but I'm not afraid of some work. And hopefully by the time, the store is actually catching on and bigger, I'll be able to upgrade it and we'll be good to go on automatic stuff.
And so, what are some other elements right now? If I were to walk into your store right now, like what else? What other things would catch my eye, or what else do you have going on in there?
So I built all my racks, everything that's in there. So anything that holds my products is all built. My counter, and my counter is probably one of my favorite things that I built. And this, I love my racks, but the counter is really cool. It's all actually wood that I had at the farm, so it's all reclaimed wood. And so I actually put a 20-gallon long in that counter, and so I have I have three Neolamprologus multifasciitis shell dwellers inside that tank, and they actually just bred out for me. So I have about, I think I counted like 30 fry. So that's kind of cool. So that's kind of like, I like to show people that, or they just notice it because it's one of the first things you walk into the door, and you see this cool looking counter with a fish tank in it.
And I cheated, so I know from looking at your Facebook or your Instagram that that you did do that counter, and you do in your multi tank, with your shell dwellers. I think it looks absolutely beautiful and a very, very eye catching thing. And the fact that it's functional, right? Like that's your register. So very cool.
Yeah, and I'm actually, so like I said, it's multiple rooms. So when you first walk in to my store, it's actually, well, right now it's an empty room. And then you walk into the main room. So that first empty room, well, that's empty right now, is actually going to be some kind of display room. So I'm trying to figure out, and I've actually made a poll for all my customers that come in or people that come visit, is whether I should put a bunch of tanks in there, or should I do like a couple tanks with a huge pond. And so it's, it's a decent sized room. I think it's like 10 feet by 15 feet. And so I can make a pretty good sized pond in there, and maybe like a couple like 75 gallon tanks.
Oh, very nice. So if you go the pond route, what do you have in mind for the pond?
I kind of want to turn it into, so I know you just had somebody else on the podcast that was talking about like the aquatic gardens and stuff like that. So maybe a very heavily planted, scape around it, and then have probably some koi and stuff like that in there. It's kind of in the planning stages still. Like I said, I've been undecided, so I've been trying to poll everybody that comes in if they'd rather see a bunch of cool aquascape tanks in there, or a big pond with like 2 aquascape tanks.
Yeah,
so,
no, I mean, I feel like having the pond in there, I guess so my vote would be for the pond, with a couple tanks on the side maybe, or just one big giant pond in there, whatever it may be. But I definitely like the idea of having the koi, but also there's a local store here in my area called Denny's, and they have it's maybe 50 gallons, a little 50-gallon pond kind of built into one of the corners of their store, and they've got African cichlids in there. So it's an African cichlid pond, and that thing is really cool too. So I would I'd throw my 2 cents out there, pond, and then honestly it'd be a toss up between having some beautiful koi or having just a super active, vibrant African cichlid pond.
Yeah, that would kind of be cool too. Thanks for the ideas, for sure.
No problem, man. No problem. It's not just I get a guest on the show, right? This is a two-way street. I got to give you something back as well.
Yeah, and then if I do it, then I could say, hey, Randy Reed gave me this idea.
Oh, if you do African cichlids, I think you have to call it like the Aquarius Podcast Pond or something like that. Like it's
like a little plaque.
Hey, I would not be sad if you did that. That would be awesome. All right, and so that's that walk-in room, and then the second room, like you're saying, is your main display showroom, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then there is a third room, which is going to be your quarantine private room. Is there like a 4th, 5th, and 6th room, or is that it to the building or to your space?
No, there is a 4th, 5th, and 6th room.
Oh my goodness.
So the main sales area is probably roughly 400 to 450 square feet, and then into part of that room, there's a door that goes into a room that's probably another couple hundred square feet. And so that room, I plan on expanding my tank. So a lot of people in my area keep pressuring me to do saltwater, and I've taken care of saltwater, so I can do it, but I know it's a whole different animal to kind of manage both. So I'm still unsure if I should do that, or maybe even a small section of that. But I also thought about expanding that into bigger fish. So I got the nano stuff out in the main room, and then you can go into this other room that's some bigger fish. But so that's one room that has expansion capabilities. I have a small storage room, so that's easy. It's just storage. Then I have the room that I would do quarantine breeding in, And then behind that is another big room where I plan to just use it as like a stock room and also maybe like a small office. And it has like a kitchenette type thing in there, so I have a microwave and a small refrigerator. And I brew beer. I brew beer as
Oh,
well.
nice.
So I professionally brew beer. Well, I'm an assistant brewer at a brewery, a brew pub here, and so I have a kegerator in there. So after hours, I can have a cold beer.
Oh, that is awesome.
But
So,
other,
so what I'm hearing is that when I'm in town, that back room is where I get to crash, right? Is that what you're telling me?
absolutely, you're
Awesome.
welcome anytime.
Yes, yes. All right, that is on record, man. I've got so many guests I have to hold them to. I basically mooch and I put you on the spot, and then you have to commit, and then I've got it on record. So
No, it would be a pleasure to have you come out and hang out back there.
that's awesome. So as far as like any, I don't want to call them collaborations, but reaching out to the local fish clubs, offering, hey, have club meetings at the Nano Tank. Like, are you trying to do any local partnership with the clubs?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna talk to a lot of the presidents. I've already kind of mentioned it to them. So I'm gonna give that, probably give a lot of the members a small discount. Nothing big, but something. And also, so actually, yesterday was a meeting for the Boston Aquarium Society, which is cool. It's right next to New England, the New England Aquarium, and I know you had Scott Dowd on the podcast, who is amazing and who actually comes to the meeting sometimes, and so we get to talk to him. Um, so I offered yesterday at the meeting for people to come down and have a meeting and come check out the store. And so they were very willing, they were very receptive to that. And so hopefully that will be scheduled soon. Also, the New England Fancy Guppy Association. So that club, we have meetings at everybody's fish rooms. And so I said, hey, this would be a cool idea, have everybody come down. And in that back room there, I guess we could have our meeting if if we didn't want to do it in the main room. And yeah, I'm definitely trying to stay very active with all the clubs and trying to get them involved, not just because I want to try to get sales out of it, but it's these hardcore people that are kind of like the base of this hobby. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And there may be anarchy in the streets with the clubs for me saying this, but I almost feel like instead of giving them a discount, because you're like the only store that's open back up in that area, you should almost charge them like an extra 5%. Like they should almost, they should be so excited that there's a store open in their area again. It's like, no. Don't give me 5% off. I'm going to give you an extra 5% on top of my tab just to make sure that you're staying successful and that you can expand and continue to have a strong foothold in this community and have a local fish store for kids just like you, when you were growing up, so kids can then go to your shop and learn all about fish and appreciate it and just have this wonderful experience like you had, and to keep the hobby going.
yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to give me extra 5%. No, yeah, I'm more thinking of, and I'm more thinking of that discount as kind of like a, one extra thing that they could put on the membership thing. So maybe memberships can go up. So I think we are lucky to have so many clubs that are probably within an hour drive of me, but, the membership, there's people that go to it, but we could build that up. And I think, maybe if they see, oh, this is one of the benefits and of many, that it might just entice somebody to say, hey, if I'm going to be buying this stuff anyway, and I could save, 5-10%, it'll pay for the membership of this club will pay for itself with that pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, it is an absolutely great idea. It's something that the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society that I'm a member of, we have partnerships with the local fish stores. I'm obviously an aquarium co-op employee now, and so there is a GSAS discount at aquarium co-op. So there's absolutely that synergy of supporting your local club, wanting to get more people involved, offering discounts for club members, and and in return, when there's new people that come into our store, we're talking about it all the time. Like, are you a member of the local fish club? If not, well, here you go. There's Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. If you happen to be closer to the north end in the Seattle area, there's a new club starting up called the North Sound Aquarium Society that's just meeting in like like a local brew pub or some other place, and they're meeting on the weekend. So I haven't been able to attend just because of my family schedule. But I'm fully in support of them. Absolutely, like the more clubs that we can have open back up, and obviously we don't want to go at a breakneck pace and just open clubs for the sake of opening clubs. But if we continue to grow that demand and passion for the hobby, like it's just a natural thing that these areas that maybe 20, 30 years ago had a really strong club and then it just kind of, petered out, to see that there's enough energy again to meet with a bunch of strangers in a completely unorganized fashion, right? Because this North Sound, they don't have the official board, they don't have all the bylaws and all of that stuff that comes with an established fish club, but you just see some fish nerds showing up at I think it's our local Scuttlebutt Brewery or whatever it is, probably taking out 4 or 5 tables worth of spaces, talking about fish in kind of the general population area, and other people are there having a meal. Like, what the heck are these guys talking about? What are these nerds going on about? Like, why did they sit us next to these fish nerds? Oh my goodness! So that's cool, man. That's super exciting, and I hope that I hope you are able to really foster that growth in your community and really partner with those fish clubs.
Yeah, and I also plan to. I've actually, well, a few people have asked me, they're like, "Oh, do you think we could start a club around here?" Because there's a lot of lower income people that just can't travel to Boston area or to Rhode Island. So I might put something together eventually once we get going and once things. I hate to say because it's probably never going to happen, is slow down a little bit, but in the means of just planning and all the upgrades and stuff that I'm going to do. But once everything kind of settles out, maybe that's an option. Maybe it won't be some big club, but maybe it's just a educational thing where we do workshops about, managing different kinds of tanks or plants and try to educate and kind of bring people together. And so hopefully maybe the Nano Tank could be a place that we foster that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that would be a fantastic idea, and to go out on a limb and say, Scott could have somebody from Project Piaba come and talk at one of those, one of those sessions at your store and talk about the Rio Negro and what's going on in Brazil or any of these other places, and just, really educate people on what's happening in the world in these environments where these fish come from. I mean, I think that is such a fantastic idea.
Absolutely, and bringing Scott Dowd up again in the Project Piaba. So I've listened to all your podcasts. I love them. Just to put that out there. But so I heard your challenge. I have a small YouTube channel, very small, but because I've been so busy and like I said, I did everything fairly quickly. I haven't really been able to release a lot of videos yet. But once my channel is worthy enough to have someone like Scott Dowd, I will take a challenge and have him on my channel and talking about that, the Project Piaba.
Yeah, I mean, well, talking with Scott, I don't even think it's a matter of if your channel's large enough or not. I think Scott's willing to spread the word, and you could even do the challenge without even having Scott on directly. You could just talk about what Project Piaba does or any other conservation effort. But one, thank you very much for listening to all those episodes and hearing me ramble on and willing to be a victim to come on to the podcast and actually talk about your experiences. So I think that's fantastic. But yeah, man, I mean, channel size, like regardless, I'd actually give you a free pass, man. You're opening up a fish store. Like you're exempt, you're exempt from having to do the challenge for a few months or a year or so because you're doing such a good work of coming into an area that lost their local fish store, recently. And now you're opening up, like you're opening up a fish store in a time when people are like, you must be crazy to do that. But there's tremendous opportunity and there is a way to be successful opening a fish store. And, it sounds like you are very much on that path, and that you have the mindset of what you need to do to be successful. And so I just hope that, even through this little podcast that, people in your area that maybe they didn't know that you opened up a store, but they're within driving distance and they hear this podcast and they go and they become a customer of yours, man. I really hope that happens.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And, it's the same thing. Like all of us. So I have a friend that's opening a fish store, and it's probably like 20 minutes away. And I posted about his stuff, and somebody was like, "Isn't that guy going to be your competition?" And I'm like, I don't think about it as competition. I think about that as my ally. These are people that are in this hobby, and there's a couple of us that are crazy enough to give this a shot. We need to work together and not against each other, and try to grow the hobby. And that's ultimately what the goal should be. I mean, I obviously want to try to sustain my family, but not at the price of ruining the hobby, or trying to put somebody else out of business or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I just think that's kind of like the way I look at stuff, and it's the same way I looked at farming. It's just we got to kind of work together, and all these good things will come together and make the hobby that much better. And so that's why I'm super excited about where my idea has manifested.
Yeah, man. Well, again, dude, I fully support you, man. I'm so happy for you that you've had a successful, opening 4 days. I hope you continue. Well, one, I hope the weather lets up and it's not as bad. It's not as bad for people to go out. Like Ned Stark says, winter's coming, and it definitely came to your area. That's for certain.
Well, it's New England. It could be 70 tomorrow.
Oh, very nice. So yeah, I mean, hey man, hopefully it is 70 degrees, and everybody's like, we need to go out and check out the Nano Tank. So, I didn't even say, man, your logo is awesome, dude. I love your logo, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm actually waiting for you to post that you actually did buy t-shirt. Wait, did you get t-shirts?
I haven't got them yet, but that order is definitely coming in soon. Going out soon, I should say.
Why don't you go ahead and let people know how they can get a hold of you, how they can find you through social media, and I mean, what's your address to your store? Go ahead and leave us with that.
So the address of the store, and just I want everybody to know, like I said, it's a mill building, so it's 56 Conduit Street in New Bedford, Mass. And so that, like I said, it's a mill building. So some people are like, is there really a retail store in there? Yes, there is. My social media. So right now I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and all of those are the Nano Tank. And yeah, so those are the places you can find me. And like I said, YouTube is definitely going to be picking up, and I hopefully be posting some more videos about kind of the progress of me building things and opening the store, and then hopefully more educational stuff in the long run.
I think this is a super exciting opportunity for people that are always looking for something new to hold their interest in the hobby. Like we've got you opening up a store. You're 4 days into it as we're talking right now, and now people can go and subscribe to your channel, subscribe to your social media feeds, and just live vicariously through you as you share your experiences opening up a store, man. I think that is a super exciting and awesome opportunity for everybody. So, I've already seen some stuff that you've put out there. It's so unique because everybody else is unboxing packages and talking about other nonsense. Like you're actually opening up a store. Like you're talking about what you're doing. Not everybody's doing that. So I highly encourage everybody to go over, check out all your channels and your links, and I'll make sure that we've got links actually in the show notes, so that people can easily find that. So Scott, man, thank you so much for coming on, dude. I've really, really appreciated our conversation, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's definitely an honor to be asked and to actually be on the show. So, yeah, it's almost speechless how thankful I am to be asked to be on the show. So I appreciate it.
Hey, man, no worries at all, Scott.